The morning sun barely broke through the fog when I stepped outside, expecting the usual quiet of my suburban driveway. Instead, sharp glints of metal caught my eye. Spike strips, jagged and cruel, lay across the concrete. My heart raced. Who would do this? My gaze drifted to the pristine lawn across the street, where Karen stood, arms crossed, her smirk barely hidden. This wasn't just a prank, it was a message. As a black homeowner in a neighborhood that felt less welcoming each day, I knew this was no accident. But Karen didn't know I had a lawyer ready to strike. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. I'd moved into Oakwood Estates 6 months ago, drawn by its manicured lawns and promises of community. As a single father and software engineer, I wanted a safe haven for my daughter Leela to grow up. The house, a modest 2-story with a red brick facade, was my fresh start after years of city life. But whispers followed me from the first day. Neighbors' glances lingered too long, their smiles tight. Karen, the HOA president, was the loudest whisperer. Her emails about property standards arrived weekly, nitpicking my mailbox or the shade of my curtains. I brushed it off, chalking it up to her overzealous control. Then came the community meetings, where her suggestions, stricter guest policies, limits on unapproved vehicles, seemed to target my weekend barbecues with friends, mostly people of color. I kept my head down, hoping to avoid trouble. But trouble found me. One evening, I noticed Karen lingering near my driveway, her phone pointed at my car. The next morning, those spike strips appeared, glinting like a trap set to wound. My tires were punctured, my commute delayed. Worse, Leela saw them, her eyes wide with fear. This wasn't just about property values, it was personal. I had heard stories of HOAs weaponizing rules against outsiders, but I never thought I'd face it so blatantly. Karen's smug confidence suggested she thought she'd won. She didn't know about Robert Hayes, my old college friend and a lawyer who thrived on dismantling injustice. As I swept the spikes away, I felt a spark of resolve. This wasn't just about my driveway, it was about my place in this neighborhood. The spike strips were only the beginning. Over the next weeks, Karen's campaign escalated. My mailbox was flagged for non-compliance despite matching every other box on the street. Fines arrived for excessive noise from Leela's birthday party, though it ended by 7 p.m. Neighbors stopped waving, their silence louder than any complaint. I felt eyes on me constantly, as if my very presence was a violation. At the HOA meeting, Karen presented a slideshow of neighborhood concerns, featuring grainy photos of my guests' cars, their faces blurred, but their skin tones unmistakable. The room grew quiet, the air thick with unspoken judgment. I sat in the back, my jaw tight, realizing this wasn't just about rules. It was about making me feel unwelcome. I started documenting everything, the fines, the emails, the photos Karen took. Each incident felt like a brick in a wall meant to push me out. I learned from a neighbor that Karen had circulated a petition to maintain property values, hinting that certain residents didn't fit the community's vision. My name wasn't mentioned, but the implication was clear. The injustice stung, not just for me, but for Leela, who asked why we couldn't have friends over anymore. I shielded her from the truth, but the weight of it grew heavier. I reached out to Robert Hayes, whose calm voice over the phone was a lifeline. He'd seen cases like this, HOAs using their power to enforce not just rules, but prejudice. He asked for my evidence, his tone sharp with purpose. As I sent him the files, I felt the ground shift. Karen's actions weren't random. They were calculated, rooted in a belief that I didn't belong. I noticed her watching my house more often, her confidence unshaken. She thought she had the upper hand, backed by the HOA's authority and the neighborhood's silence. But Robert was already digging into local laws, HOA bylaws, and fair housing regulations. He found cracks in Karen's armor, violations in how she enforced rules, inconsistencies in her complaints. Each night I lay awake, the memory of those spike strips burning in my mind. They weren't just a threat to my car, they were a message that my family wasn't wanted. The tension built, a quiet storm gathering. I knew confronting Karen directly would play into her hands. Instead, I trusted Robert's plan, though he warned it would take time. Every new fine, every sidelong glance from a neighbor pushed me closer to the edge. But I held on, knowing the real battle was coming. The HOA meeting room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Karen stood at the podium, her voice crisp as she outlined new community standards. I sat near the front, my folder of evidence heavy in my hands. Robert had prepared me for this moment, his plan meticulous. He'd uncovered that Karen's selective enforcement, targeting my home while ignoring similar violations by others, violated fair housing laws. The spike strips, he argued, were vandalism, and her documented pattern of harassment could trigger a lawsuit. As Karen finished her speech, I stood, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I presented my case, laying out the photos, emails, and fines. The room shifted, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Karen's face tightened, her confidence cracking. Robert had sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA board that morning, citing legal violations and demanding an audit of their practices. The board members, caught off guard, fumbled through the responses. Karen tried to dismiss my claims, but the evidence was undeniable. A neighbor, one of the few who'd stayed neutral, confirmed seeing Karen near my driveway the night the spikes appeared. The room felt electric, the weight of her actions exposed. I saw doubt in the eyes of those who'd once nodded along with her. The meeting ended in chaos, with the board promising to investigate. As I left, Karen's glare followed me, but it lacked its former power. Robert's letter wasn't just a warning, it was a promise of accountability. For the first time, I felt the neighborhood silence break, replaced by whispers of change. In the weeks that followed, the HOA board suspended Karen's presidency pending an investigation. Robert's legal pressure forced them to review their bylaws, revealing a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. The fines against me were dropped, and the board issued a public apology, a rare admission of fault. Karen moved away quietly, her house sold within a month. The neighborhood didn't transform overnight, but small shifts emerged. Neighbors waved again, and Lila's friends returned for playdates. I felt a weight lift, though the memory of those spike strips lingered, a reminder of how quickly prejudice could escalate. Robert's work didn't just protect my family, it exposed a system that had quietly enabled injustice. I started attending HOA meetings, advocating for fairer rules, determined to ensure no one else felt like an outsider in their own home. The experience changed me, sharpening my resolve to challenge exclusion wherever it hid. Lila noticed a difference, her laughter freer now. The driveway, once a battleground, became just a driveway again. But the bigger fight wasn't over. How many others faced their own Karens, their own spike strips, without a lawyer like Robert to fight back? That question haunted me. Racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's a smirk, a rule, a spike in the dark. Standing up to it takes more than courage. It takes strategy, evidence, and allies. My story wasn't just about winning. It was about exposing a truth that too many ignore. What happens when we stop staying silent? That's the question I leave with you, because change starts when we decide to fight, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who calls the place home.